I couldn't tell you this when I lived there, but I can tell you now that I don't live there anymore, right? Back in Massachusetts, the bus company that treated me like shit, or shall we say, the select male drivers treated me like shit, okay, reminded me 100% of being in an abusive relationship or abusive situations, or you know what I mean? It was called Gatra. And the things I can tell you, how I was treated, again, I gotta stress and emphasize when I'd done nothing wrong. And remember, righteous indignation, when you know you're being treated badly, but the bus driver has all the power and they make sure you know it, the men, they make sure you know that they have the power to throw you off that bus, okay? For any reason they dream up in they're just petty, arrogant little heads, okay? I did nothing wrong ever. The drivers were on power trips. And then they find out I complained. Yeah, I complained because you leave several minutes early from a stop. You're supposed to not leave even 1 minute early. Okay? There were bus drivers, at least one, I was genuinely, justifiably feared. Okay? There was another one who I repeatedly complained. Other people did as well. They warned me up front about his way he was talking on his cell phone while he's driving, all that. Nothing was ever done until I predicted it. There was one time I called management. You were allowed to leave a voice, but no one ever cared. No one ever got back to me. They used to, but after a few years ago, the big P, everything changed and no one gave a fuck. So they act like they're going to investigate, they act like this and they act like that, and then nothing ever happens. Okay? You even go higher up and no one ever cares. So you're left, if you're me, I mean, I could write a book. I wrote so much about everything, and it's all in writing. Complaint after complaint. I even recorded on my little recorder every voicemail I ever left for the manager, who in years past, because remember, I lived with my mom for 12 years. I rode that bus for 12 years. It got worse and worse as time went by, because they had to, shall we say, they had to hire worse drivers. They couldn't find anyone, and and they don't care. They don't care if you're mistreated. They don't care. You had to be unless you're at a set stop, you wave the bus down. The bus drivers would go by you, and if you're me, you just you're out of luck. If you had planned your day, you're out of luck. So that's how I had to live, and on top of all the horror going on with my mom, it got worse and worse, but particularly over the last couple of years, where it was no longer just mental. Periodically, it was physical, serious physical problems, where I was repeatedly told she was going to die, and she was on more medication than she'd ever been on in her life, because now she's on all the heart medication, and so why will I ever expect, even though I know I'm right, okay, that's the thing, There are people who go around thinking they're right and they're totally wrong. Okay? I've watched TV sitcoms where I'm just like, you're totally wrong, and you're acting like you're right, and what you're doing is just totally wrong. Okay? Not me. I get walked all over. Walked all over. And you know damn well why. You know why. You know why. It's not going to be any different here. I said I just want to keep a low profile, but if I don't stand up for myself and allow myself to be walked all over because of my life situation, then I'm left just feeling like absolute shit, absolute nothing at all. And I already feel that way, but it just makes it a million times worse. My God, towards the end, back in Massachusetts, it was so bad. It was so bad with that Gatra company. The way the drivers were behaving, they just did not give a fuck, and they were not ever going to be fired, and they weren't ever even probably reprimanded. The things that they were doing that I brought to the attention of the higher ups who didn't give a fuck. Remember, this wasn't the MBTA, it wasn't the